It's supposed to say this is being recorded, right?
It said that.
Oh, then I missed it out. Thank you. All right, cool. So it's recording now. Brilliant. Okay, hi everyone. My name is 𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐍𝐄𝐓, and I'm taking you guys through requirements elicitation and requirements management again. Okay. Um, So we're going to go through the definition of requirements, type of requirements, the requirements framework, stages of requirements elicitation, techniques, an explanation of some of the techniques, not all of them. There are some questions that would guide you through the requirements elicitation process and some challenges you may face during requirements elicitation. Okay. So for definition, now your requirement is your statement of need or condition for a particular service or product. So what exactly every project is usually around a product. There's supposed to be an outcome, a deliverable at the end of the project that adds value to the organization. In order to get that particular product, there are some needs that have to be met. There are some conditions that need to be fulfilled. Those are called requirements. It's from your requirements that you get user stories. From your requirements, you get epics, features, and user stories. User stories are documenting requirements, but everything revolves around the requirements. So once you come onto a project as a BA, that should be your focus. You just basically go like, okay, so have the requirements already been highlighted or documented, or do you need me to do it? So don't go into any project when you don't understand what the requirements, what is supposed to be delivered at the end of the day. Because if someone says, I want a product, there are many definitions of that product. Like the example I keep giving you, if someone says, I want a wedding cake, there are so many different types of wedding cakes, flavor, tier, color, all kinds of different things, size, design, so many different things. Who is it for? Is it vegan or is it non-vegan? Will it have gluten? Will it not have gluten? It's just a myriad of possibilities. So, in order to know what should be delivered, you need requirements. And your requirements are not things that you decide what the requirements are. Your requirements are given to you by the stakeholder. Who is the person sponsoring the project? Who is the person who has greenlit the project? Is the stakeholder. Who are the people working on the project? Who are the people using the product and project? Remember, so all these are your stakeholders. So your stakeholders are the ones who will give you the requirements. Okay. Now, your requirements elicitation is the process of determining what those requirements are. Yeah, if you've done some research, you actually see that in some places it's called requirement gathering. And the reason why elicitation is now more used than gathering, they mean similar things. Requirements gathering is the older term. But now people now use requirements elicitation because elicitation means that you as the BA gathering almost means that the requirements is there and you're just going to go and pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. But we found out that that's not usually the case. That there is sometimes you need to put in the effort to draw out the requirements from your stakeholders. You guys are in a project now that has your PO, and your PO is giving you the requirements. So what you guys are doing now is actually requirements gathering, but there has to be some elicitation. So even if your stakeholder gives you the requirements, you can still ask additional questions to draw out more detail. So that you can ask what questions, how questions, why questions. All these are the different kinds of types of questions, open-ended questions, so that you can get more detail from the stakeholder. Sometimes it's not even a conversation. You may need to watch the stakeholder do their job. And in watching the stakeholder do their job, you're documenting it. So you're like, okay, this product will need to have these particular features based on what you've observed. the stakeholders do. So that we'll get into techniques of requirement elicitation, but elicitation is the process of getting those requirements, gathering them, determining what the requirements are, what the project needs to achieve, and what needs to be created. That's the process of elicitation. And I like this diagram because this tells you all the different reasons why projects fail. So projects fail because of 3%, a lack of qualified resources, 14% communication issues, 17% inadequate risk management, 15% poor scope definition. But poor requirements definition is 50%. Half of all projects fail because of poor requirements definition. So what you do is very important. The project won't have anything to work on without BAs. Yeah, so what we do is really, really important. So when you come onto any project, always let your first focus be requirements. What are the requirements? Even if the requirements have already been highlighted, you still need to analyze those requirements to make sure that they are complete, to make sure that they have been verified and validated. So, firstly, you can come onto a project and there's no requirements. So you need to gather those requirements. Sometimes you can come into the project and there are some requirements, but it's not all the requirements that need to have been gathered. They're just a few. For example, I was asked to join a project recently, and they have some requirements. They have for example, they have some requirements from the procurement team, and they have some requirements from the marketing team and the sales team. But I just noticed there are no requirements from the finance team. There's no requirements from the IT team. There's no requirements from operations. All these are different stakeholders who also have an interest in the product that is being delivered. So even though we have some requirements, we need additional requirements from these different stakeholders. And even some of the requirements that are there may not be complete. So yes, we have requirements from the procurement team, but there are just a few of them, and they're not complete. So I have to go back to the procurement team again to say, are these all the requirements? Do you guys have more requirements? Okay, these ones that you have written out, is this all the information that is needed? I mean, you may have questions as a BA. Oh, I don't really understand this particular requirement. Can you please explain it a bit more? That's part of your elicitation process. So your requirements are usually the start of your project. You must make sure that you have them and they are properly defined. Okay. So the next issue is, okay, I've talked to you about the what requirements elicitation is. Now the process of requirement elicitation is very important as well, because you need to ensure that all the stakeholders, all their needs are identified and understood. So in order to do this, first you need to understand who your stakeholders are. So make sure you, like we talked about stakeholder management, make sure you find out all your different stakeholders. It says identify the relevant stakeholders, all the stakeholders. And that means you go with your project team, number one, because they're the ones delivering or executing your requirements. Who are the business stakeholders? That's your PO, your project sponsor, the executives, your different project sponsors, like I said, and then who are the um users? How are the users going to be? So this could be your customers, it could be your clients, the people that are going to use the end product when you've delivered a particular product. Who are the end users? In your case, it's the mentors and the mentees. Okay, they are going to be the users. You don't know them yet, but by the time the product it has been built, they are the ones that are going to benefit. They're the ones that are going to use it. So you always have to bear what their requirements are in mind. Then you now have the other external stakeholders within the organization. I just talked about like the finance team, HR team, marketing, sales, IT, digital, all these different teams, depending on who they are. So they're not part of the project team, but they're part of the organization, and you may need to take their requirements into consideration as well. Then you now have other external stakeholders. Do you have regulatory bodies, government bodies who have policies that affect that product, product? So if you do, then you have to take their policies and their regulatory requirements also into consideration as well. Okay. So, identify the relevant stakeholders, establish what the goals and objectives are, because all your requirements have to align with these goals and objectives. So, you have to know what your goals and objectives are. What do you want to achieve? What problem do you want to solve? What benefit do you want to get at the end of the day? So, once you have that, then you make sure that the requirements align with them. If your benefit is to have an app, a mobile app that people can use to purchase things online, then a requirement will not be to have a physical shop. That's out of scope. You already identified that. Someone says, oh, we need to have a physical place where if the customers have issues, they can come and complain to us and all of that. You're like, yeah, but the particular project goal is to have a mobile app or a virtual presence in a particular place. A physical store is out of scope. It may be for future, we can do that in future, but for purposes of the project goal objective, it's out of scope. So you because you know what the goal is, you can tell what requirements is out of scope, and you can ask. Remember, they're not your requirements. So if you have any questions, you say, but isn't this out of scope? You always have to verify. You always have to ask the people who share the project goals and objectives with you. Then once you have that, you now elicit the requirement from stakeholders. Okay. Then once you do that, you have to document the requirements. This is a very, very important step. You need to document the requirements. That's what creating user stories is. You're documenting the requirements. You're creating user stories based on the requirements that you have been given. Once you've documented them, you now have to go back to the stakeholder again to confirm that your requirements are correct, complete, concise. You have to make sure, because remember, they're not your requirements. Okay, you don't get requirements from the air. You're not the one that determines the requirements. The stakeholder determines the requirements. So once you've documented it, you still have to go back to the stakeholder to confirm, are these the correct ones? Are these the right ones? Because they could be the correct ones, but you also have to make sure. Remember, we talked about aligning them to goals and objectives. So, do the documented requirements align with the what do they call it, with the project goals and objectives? Then you now prioritize them, because there's some that are must haves, should haves, could haves, nice to haves. Okay, so you have to prioritize which ones are your must haves for your MVP. It's called your minimum viable product. So at the end, remember, a project has an end date. At that end date, we're going to have a product. For that product, what requirements must we have to deliver on that product? If we have extra time and extra budget, you have should have, this should have, could haves are extra. It's like your wish list. Nice to have. This thing will be nice to have. But if we don't have it, it won't really affect, the delivery of the project. So, but your must haves are your most important ones. Once you understand what the must haves are, they are the ones that you deliver first. Okay. And then you now know that prioritizing also highlights which ones are dependent on which ones. So even though we have 10 must haves, we cannot have number 7 until we have number 2. If, for example, you want a payment portal attached to your project, the online web store, online store, you want it to have a payment portal. People should be able to pay for the services. In order to have that, you have to build the application now. Okay? There has to be a website that has a place where people can actually go to use that payment portal. So you, even though your payment portal is a must-have, there are some dependencies, there's some requirements that have to be developed first before you get to that one. So that's the process of prioritizing. Prioritizing is important for two reasons. Firstly, you determine which ones are critical to the delivery of that project, must haves. Which ones must you have? And then when you've determined what the must haves are, what is the order of delivery? Which one should we have first? Which one should we have second? Which one should we have third? This never make assumptions is very, very important. See, no one is saying that you don't know what to do or you're not intelligent. No. But as a BA, remember, you're a bridge. You are literally a conduit. That's what you are. So it's like a tap. A tap is a pipe from the reservoir of the water to the person that needs the water. The tap doesn't hold the water. But without the tap, I mean, it's just chaos. The user will not be able to get the water. So you're critical to the success of the project. But the requirements are not your requirements. So you must always be careful to document the requirements the way the stakeholder has asked for them, the order the stakeholder needs it. Even prioritization, you need the stakeholder. Elicitation, you need the stakeholder. Documenting, you can't document, you come back to confirm it with the stakeholder. Prioritization, you need the stakeholder. So if you have any question, don't assume, don't presume to know. Always go back to ask questions. Determine if this person, doesn't mind emails, or maybe they like meetings or something, but find a way to go back to that stakeholder to validate what the requirements are. And if you have any questions, always ask. Okay, they expect us BAs to ask questions, so don't hesitate when you want to ask questions. So there are different kinds of requirements. These are the four main categories, but trust me when I say that there are other categories as well. So under these main categories, there are now sub categories. So you have general requirements, and under these you have business requirements. Business requirements most of the time. So business objectives, policies, continuity, legal, just things that have to do with the business. Yeah. Then you have technical requirements. So they have to do with the hardware, software, user interface, web applications. All these are technical. There's a technicality to it. Okay. Then you have functional requirements. Functional requirements have to do with usage. How does it function? How does it act? If someone does something, what will be the response? What will the person need? What will the user need to do to get a particular thing? It's a function. It's a feature. Yeah. How does this thing work? Yeah. So that's functionality. Non-functional um, requirements have more to do with the background of it. So when you talk about performance, if I click on the home button, how quickly does it load? Does it take 2 seconds? Does it take 10 seconds? Yeah. If there are 10 people that are using this requirement, this website, can it take that load, or will it start slowing down, or will it crash? When is it available? Is it available 24 hours, or is it available from 9 to 5? If something happens and we need to back it up and recover, what's that process? So all these are non-functional. They are like in the back end. How does this system work in the back end? Those are your what's the security? Can anybody just come in to use it, or do you have like two-factor authentication to protect you? What's the password? All those sorts of things. Even though the user puts their password in, that's functional. When the user puts their password in, what happens in the back end? What system do we have in the back end to protect the data we collect? That's security, and that's non-functional. So all these are the different categories of requirements, and your requirements come in different shapes and sizes. and who the people that are going to give you these requirements are different. Okay, that's why BAs can work in any industry. We don't need to know the technicality of it, but we need to go to the stakeholder that understands the technicality and get those requirements from him and document it. I don't need to know how the medical industry works. I'm not a doctor, but I can talk to doctors and they can tell me what their requirements are and how their domain functions. And based on what they tell me, I'll document the requirements. So that's why BAs, we can go anywhere in any project and do anything at all, because they are not our requirements. We don't have to have that knowledge. We just need to know how to elicit it from the right stakeholders. Okay. So, requirements framework. Okay. So this is the life cycle of requirements engineering. RE is requirements engineering. So it's just the whole process of requirements, the requirements framework. Okay. It starts with, you see that word again, gathering. Again, it's elicitation, but you elicit, you analyze, you document, and you validate the requirements to make sure that the solution meets the business needs. Okay. So the first one is elicitation. Analysis, you elicit it, then you analyze it, you document it, you go back again to validate it. That's the life cycle. Okay. And then management is the last one because it's continuous. You have to do this life cycle. You have to continue this cycle continuously. It's not just one and done. You elicit, you refine, you analyze, you document, you validate, you go back to manage. Managing is okay. It's committed into sprint. Has it been developed? Has it been tested? Have you performed UAT? Is it done? Okay, there's a bug. We need to go back again and do something until it's done. That one is sorted. You go back again, elicit the next set of requirements, so on and so forth. So it's a cycle. You keep going through the same cycle all over again until the project is delivered. Okay, so that's your life cycle there. I've shown you this image before, and for me it's emphasizes the need for the right documentation. All this was possible because the requirements were not properly elicited, analyzed, documented, validated, and managed. And as you can see, the area for documenting is zero. There was no documentation. If there was, then all this would not happen. We would have the customer would have explained what they wanted to us, would have documented it, analyzed it, gone back to verify, delivered on it, managed it, and then would have given them what they wanted. Okay, so this image just shows you the importance of requirements requirements engineering. Elicitation is just the first part of it. Okay, so different stages of requirements elicitation, says gathering for elicitation. Okay, so you understand the pain behind the requirements or the need. What's the problem statement? What is the need? What is the objective? What is the goal? What is the benefit that needs to be gotten from this project? That's always your starting point. If you don't start with understanding what the project is about, what it's trying to achieve, you keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth because you didn't really understand what you're trying to achieve. That's the very first part. Okay. Make sure you document you make sure that the project is communicated, every part of the project is communicated in simple language. If there is ambiguity in the language, there'll be confusion somewhere. So even while you're eliciting and documenting, make sure as much as possible that you use the simplest language possible. You make sure that you communicate properly. Yeah. And even when technical terms need to be used for that project, because some projects are technical, you can't simplify them. They are technical, there's nothing you can do. Technical tech language, legal language, medical language, insurance language, whatever industry it is, it has its own language. Just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, you have to have your glossary to say that in this particular project, when we say PGX, this is what we mean. When we say PBI, this is what we mean. So let me give you an example here. Your Azure DevOps uses PBI, product backlog item. So as a BA who uses your Azure DevOps, you're used to PBI being product backlog item. But if you go into a data analysis class, they will also say PBI. They don't use Azure DevOps. So when they say PBI, what do they mean? They mean Power BI, Power Business Intelligence. That's a tool that they use. And rather than saying Power Business Intelligence or Power BI, they say PBI. So you, the BA, will go into a data analysis class and you hear PBI and you're like, oh, why are they saying product backlog item? Or a data analyst will come into your class and you guys will say PBI and they're like, oh, why are they saying Power BI? So you have to make it clear that for this project, when we say PBI, this is what we mean. We don't mean Power BI, we mean product backlog item. There are so many acronyms like that, or so many terms that are used in different contexts, in different domains. So you have to make it clear that within this project, when we say this thing, this is what we mean. When we say web application, this is what we mean. When we say home page, this is what we mean. When we say landing page, this is what we mean. When we say home button, this is what we mean. All those sorts of things. Yeah. So you have, that's part of eliminating language ambiguity. Identify corner cases. This is really very important, and the more you become skilled at being a BA, the more you do this. This is identify edge cases. There are some cases that are not common, but there's a possibility that it will happen. Okay, so let me see. For example, um, um, you have, let's say, the key to your house. For example, you have the key to your house. Every day you lock your house, you go out, you lock your house, you go out, maybe the key to your car, whatever, you go out. What happens if you lose that key? Do you have a spare somewhere? Do you have a spare with a neighbor, your brother, your sister, somebody? Chances are you won't lose your key. You are a careful person. When you come home, you drop your key somewhere. But what if you lose your key? It probably won't happen, no. But what if you do? There should be a contingency. So that's an edge case. It's not likely to happen. It most likely won't happen. But as a thorough BA who is thinking of all the possibilities, you plan for it anyway. You just plan for it anyway. This is the process, but there's an edge case. It has a slight possibility of happening. It most likely won't happen. But what if it happens? You plan for it as well. So identify edge cases and plan for them. Okay, and not plan for them, like understand the process of what would happen if those things do happen. Okay, then you write your user stories. We all know that one. Create your definition of ready and your definition of done. You've done that, you know what those are. So those are really very important. So these are okay. So I can't see you. So if you have a question, please, you can write it in the chat or write it down or something, and then when we're done, we can just go through it quickly. I'll try and be done like 5-10 minutes or so before your 9:30 class, so we can have a quick conversation as well. So yeah, I'll try and speed it up. So there are different elicitation techniques. Okay, these are, how do you get these requirements? It's not one and done. The one you guys are doing now is one process of getting your requirements. You can come onto a project. The first thing I normally ask when I come onto the project is there any documentation on the project? Has something been done? Normally by the time a BA comes, there's already documentation. You already have your project initiation document, if that's available. You can have your business case if that's available. You can have some what do they call it, initiation documents. Okay, so you can use that document to elicit some of your requirements. Yeah, it already tell you this is the kind of product we want. So by the time you know what the product is, you can use that to elicit some requirements. Obviously, you have to still validate it. You have to still go back to the stakeholder, but at least you can use that as a start. Then you have observation. I've talked about observation, just watching the people do the job. And you have interviews. You're like, okay, these and these and these are the different stakeholders. You can schedule interviews with them. You guys have interviews with your POs. Although I don't know how many questions you people asking. Make sure you guys are asking your POs questions, okay? It helps you. BAs always ask questions. So even if it seems that they're giving you all the information, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they may not remember everything. And sometimes you need some additional information. You need to understand the scope. You need to understand the context. So you can ask as much questions as you need to. And in some cases, you may not even have a PO. You may have loads of different stakeholders that you need to talk to, interview, in order to get the requirements from them. I don't know if you guys remember the class we did on requirements elicitation. We actually had a role-playing session where there was an interview with a stakeholder. That's an example of an interview. Then you have a workshop. Your workshop is where you have multiple stakeholders, and to be able to get go to each one to get requirements is long. So you bring everybody together in one room, and then you guys start talking about your you start asking them about the requirements. This is also helpful when there are conflicting requirements. So if one stakeholder has one requirement and another stakeholder has another requirement, and both of them conflict, like we can't do these things at the same time. You can't have a 3-tiered cake and a 5-tiered cake. Do you want a 3-tiered cake or do you want a 5-tiered cake? By the time you bring both stakeholders together, they can agree. They'll say, okay, let's agree on 4-tier. Okay, this is the reason why I want 3-tier. This is the reason why I want 5-tier. Can we agree to disagree, or can we agree on can we agree on the average? Or okay, I agree, let's have a 5-tier cake, or no, I agree, let's have it. They'll come to some consensus, okay, in a workshop. So depending on the situation, you may decide that a workshop is the best method of elicitation. Prototyping. This is, for example, your wireframing. That's a prototype, or you can use you can create a visual. Prototyping is like you're creating a visual representation of what the product is. So they tell you that we want a cake, a 3-tier cake that has this design and that design. You can go and create a computer generated image and show them. Is this the kind of cake you want? Okay, we want it a bit bigger. We want it a bit higher. We want it a different color. So you're showing them a picture. It could even be a model. You can create a model, a type of the product. Maybe you guys want to produce toys for kids. You can now create a prototype of the toy. You say, okay, this is the prototype. Is this what you're talking about? They'll say, okay, tweak this, change this. Oh, yes, this works. It's a prototype. You're creating a model of the final product. And then brainstorming there are loads of this, is just a few. There are many different techniques. There's shadowing. There are so many different techniques. Honestly, brainstorming, you guys are just is what it says. You guys are just throwing out ideas. Oh, we need an idea for this thing. What do you guys think? But just putting up suggestions, and from those suggestions you can elicit the requirements. All right, so documentation. Okay, I've talked about how important documentation is to the project. It has to do with capturing, organizing, and communicating the business requirements. Clearly capturing, I like that word. Okay, so your documentation technique is very important. Yeah, there are different ways of documenting your requirements, but your technique is important. Numbering, IDing is very, very important. Sometimes you have hundreds of requirements. You have to be able to ID them, number them properly so that they're well organized. Okay, you already know what your user story is. The smallest, concisest representation of your requirements, usually told from the user's perspective. Your acceptance criteria, your process map, These are ways of document. Someone tells you this is what I want. You create a process map to document that requirement. And again, you have to still go back to them to say, is this what you're talking about? Is this complete? Did I get it right? Is there anything you need to amend, update, all of that, review? Your use case. So your use case is, what are the different uses of this product? In what different ways can it be used? What are the different ways it can be used? Yeah, so that's your use case. For example, it's usually with a system and then obviously a user. So it's usually for use cases are for system usually for systems basically. Let me try and think of an example. um you have your self-checkout machine. Yeah, you have all these machines in all these grocery stores that are self-checkout. Yeah. So you have a machine there and then you want to check out. So one of the uses is that you can use it to check out. Another use, it can be, you can use it to get money back. It can give you your money back. It can, so there are many different things it can do. Yeah. So if I you know want to get a particular use out of that system, you can document it. So this is one use case. This is another use case. This is another use case. We know what the wireframe is. You've already done that. Your requirements catalog is another way of capturing your requirements. Okay, and then you have your requirements traceability matrix. That one is really important, especially for people who are in like waterfall or agile um projects that are waterfall, using the waterfall framework. Requirements traceability is very important because your traceability will not only have the um description, your user story, acceptance criteria, it will also have your source. So who was the stakeholder that provided this particular what did they call it, this particular requirement? Who is working on it? What's the status? Have they worked on it? Has it been developed? Has it been tested? Has it been signed off on? What's the status? Your requirements traceability matrix will have things like, is this in scope? Is it out of scope? All of that. So one document has from the origin of that requirement to its delivery. That's for each requirement. You have different columns that you can trace that requirement from its origin. Who is the owner of that requirement? Who gave you that requirement up until who has worked on it? Has it been worked on? Has it been delivered? Has it been done? Has it been signed off on? Yeah. So that's your user traceability matrix. So this is another kind of elicitation technique. Yeah, it's observation. Okay. Again, I really like um the terms we use, not even just in IT. I like BA terms because it does what it says on the box. If you're talking about observation, that's what it is. It's observation. You use it to watch your user and in real time how they interact with the system or the process or the workflow. So it's almost like you're what do they call it now? A fly on the wall. You're not interacting with the user, you're just watching them. You're observing them as they do their work. And as you're observing them, you're documenting it. Okay? So there are different kinds. Formal observation, watching as a task is being done. You can ask questions if there's anything you need to know. Oh, why did you do this? How did you do that? All of that. So then you have your protocol analysis. So people can describe to you what they're doing. Yeah, they're telling you, okay, this is what we do. I come in, I start my laptop, I pull up this document, I do this, I do that. Oh, why do you do that? So they are literally talking you through what they're doing and telling you what they're doing, why they're doing it. And then shadowing is, again, you're literally for a period because obviously maybe their day to day is different. So rather than just they come in and they sit down one place, maybe today they sit down, tomorrow they're in the back, the next day they're in the shop. They're doing different things. So you literally follow them, you shadow them as they're doing all these different things, and you document all these things. Yeah. So then I just talked about the workshop. It's during the workshop that you brainstorm. Your workshop that you do round robin discussions. Again, during the stakeholder, because you have during your stakeholder management class, one of the things I talked about is different stakeholders and the different um different types, different personalities, different cultural backgrounds, all of that. So when you're bringing different people into a particular place for a workshop, you have to understand the dynamics in the room. There may be some people that are senior executives, and there are some people that are just everyday users. The everyday users might be intimidated by the senior executive, so they won't want to talk. You may have a senior executive that believes that they've been in this company for 20 years, so they know everything. So they're the ones dominating the information. They're just talking, talking, talking. Meanwhile, you also need the perspective of the user who is, they may see themselves as a low level user, blah, 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 blah. They may be shy, they may be introverted. There are some people that are extroverted. So when you bring a lot of people into a room, you have to be aware of the dynamics at work in that room, and you have to make sure that at the end of the day you get the information you need from that room, despite all the different personalities there. So round robin is one of the ways to get everybody to say something. So you're like, okay, Nosa, what do you think? Okay, Catherine, what do you think? Ijoma, what do you think? Samo, what do you think? You make sure everybody says something, because you know that one person might be freer to talk while some other people might not really want to talk, but you want to hear everyone's opinion. So round robin is almost informal. You say, no sir, when you finish talking, hand the call the next person. He'll call Catherine. Catherine, when you finish talking, call the next person. Catherine will call the drummer. So it may not even be you calling the people, because it's round robin. You can give that assignment to the next. Yeah, there are many different ways, icebreakers, many different ways to engage people. But you have to make sure that during your workshop, all your stakeholders are engaged. Otherwise, you won't get um what you need from them. Brainstorming and brainwriting are the same thing. It's just that rather than brainstorming, most of the time people are shouting out things, this, that, and then one person is writing, but brainwriting, you tell them, okay, guys, for the next 5 minutes, write down everything you think about this particular thing. So everybody's writing. When they finish writing, they will now display it, then you can go through. So it's similar but different. Sticky notes, same thing. You get people to write things down on sticky notes, and then you put it on top where everybody can see it, and then you go through each sticky note one by one by one by one by one. You can do that with brainstorming or brainwriting. Breakout rooms. This is another one that is really good. Yeah, if you have different work streams in one place together, you have finance, you have HR, you have IT, you have different people in the room. Once they finished the general requirements, there may be some requirements that are specific to each group. Then you now say, okay, all the IT people, could you guys go into one space and talk about what is important to you? All the finance people, could you guys go into one breakout space? We have breakout rooms now, as you can see. BAs are going to their own room, SMs are going to their own room, all of that. So when you have a workshop, you can also have group within the group. You just break them out, and then they talk through what their requirements are, and then you can document each one. So there are many different techniques to get what you want. Interview, we don't have time, so it's self-explanatory. But during your interview, always ask questions. There are techniques called things like 5 whys, there are fishbone diagrams, root cause analysis. All these things are things where they are telling you, ask questions, ask why, ask what, ask who, ask when, ask where. Ask open-ended questions. So you get people talking. Don't ask them yes or no questions. Ask them open-ended questions, so they'll need to talk. Yeah. So you have to develop that skill of getting people to talk. Okay. Now these are some helpful elicitation questions, okay? Just to be able to identify some needs. There are some assumptions you may have. You can ask those. Ask. Make sure you ask. If you're confused about anything, you want clarity on anything, always ask. A lot of my emails are, I want to confirm, I want to clarify, I want to, those are the kind of terms I use, because I'm like, I know this seems um clear, but I don't want to make any assumptions. So can I please clarify that blah 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 blah? And everybody comes back and they say yes, no, and whatever. So don't be afraid to say, oh, this thing is so clear. If I ask, I'll look stupid. No, as a BA, you ask questions. There's no stupid question as a BA. What I try to do most of the time is I try not to get them to give me the same information twice. Don't make people give you the same information twice. Get it the first time. Document it the first time. But if you don't have that information, ask. But once you've asked that question, even if you want clarity, ask a different variation of that question. Ask them to give you additional information. But don't keep asking the same question over and over and over again. And that usually happens when you don't record things. People are just talking, talking, talking. Then you're not asking questions. "Ah, but I answered that question now. How far?" So that's why recording is very important for us as BAs. You want to be able to go back to that conversation and listen, because you won't have caught every single thing. So these are just some questions you can ask. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so what does this thing do? What's the core function of this particular feature? What does it actually do? Okay, what outcome are we trying to achieve? Yeah, what are the key parts or components? What makes up this feature? What steps do we need to? What are our next steps? I like next steps questions so much. So we finished this meeting. What next? What are we doing next? Yeah. What needs to be done or completed before this thing can happen? What needs to happen next? What needs to happen? See, what if is very good for your corner questions, edge case. What if this happens? What then? What if this happens? What then? So these are just some examples. Oh gosh, time. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so um yes. So based on everything you've heard um now and what you know, I hope that has given you guys some clarity. I hope that has, helped understand what the elicitation process is. Again, with BAs, research is very important. We don't expect that we'll give you all the information here. It's not possible. I learn all the time. I keep learning. I keep going to, different forums, reading BA books, all of that, because each project is different. But what we're giving you is the basis, the foundation. Once you know this, you know it. You build from there, but don't stay here. So even though, I've given you the basics of requirements, engineering or requirements management, please go ahead, do your own research, listen to this recording over again. There are other requirements, elicitation recordings, even within Blue Sky. Listen to them again. The more you listen to them, the familiar the terms will be, the process will be, all of that. Because trust me when I tell you that you won't always go into a project that has a PO. So even now that you have a PO, start building those muscles of asking questions and doing your why, what, how questions, all those things. Ask. This is a nice environment, a safe environment. So start using those muscles. Anything you learn, put it into practice. Try. Go into an elicitation process or a refinement process, asking a question. Okay. And then, um put these things into practice and keep learning. So I hope you've been able to get value out of this. Now is your time. We have 5 minutes before your session starts. Do you guys have any questions for me? Any questions? Was anything clearer? Did you understand something a bit better now? Or are there still, things that you're not sure of when it comes to requirements elicitation? I keep saying, during your interview, there are certain questions that are almost guaranteed. Requirements elicitation is one of them. So make sure you understand the life cycle and you can talk through it. You can understand the process, based on your own experience. So the things you're doing, that's the requirements life cycle. Yeah. So when someone asks you about the requirement cycle, you should not only be able to talk about it, but also say, in the project I'm working on, this was how I went about with my requirements elicitation, validation, analysis, documentation, all those things. So you're doing all these things at the moment. You have to be able to identify that this thing that I'm doing is actually documentation. This thing that I'm doing is actually analysis. This thing I'm doing is actually validation. Yeah. So um this wireframe is part of documentation. Yeah, the process map is part of documentation. So all those different things, you have to be able to identify the things you're doing and know where they fall in within the requirements lifecycle. So if someone asks you, so what's your approach to requirements elicitation, you can talk to them about the requirements lifecycle and give them an example of how you've used it in this project. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Comments?
Hello.
Hi, Nessa.
Yeah, I think my question was about the non-functional requirements.
Mm-hmm.
I think my understanding of it is like sort of the items are going to like a wish list or aesthetics.
Nope.
Um, in the sense that, like you say, you mentioned about the seconds it takes the website to load
Mm-hmm.
or the feel and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. That's my understanding of it. So, which
Yeah.
interpreted into aesthetics and performance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what was the question? You're asking if it is the wish list, or if it's,
Yeah, it's
is that what you're
kind
asking?
of like because the way I was taught was like because they're non-functional, they not some of the non-functional will not be priority. Basically, that's how I was taught. So I don't know if it's any different.
So no. If you
Okay.
notice in your user stories, we're
Hmm.
always trying to change. And when you say static and then there's non-functional there, we're always trying to
Hmm.
change it to say, no, static doesn't mean non-functional,
Hmm.
and static doesn't mean it doesn't have priority.
Hmm.
Non-functional requirements are actually very, very important. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you come onto Zoom, for example. Yeah, this is a Zoom platform, and I click on share screen.
Hmm.
How long does it take before my screen loads? Am I there waiting for it to load, or does it happen like that?
No,
What
it's
of
takes few seconds.
Exactly. So what of if someone gets the link to this page and
Yeah.
they want to join this meeting? Maybe they're not part of Blue Sky, but someone shared the link with them and they want to join
Hmm.
in. Are they just going to have
Okay.
access to it, or does someone need to let them in? Is there a check, a security check
Yeah.
that needs to be performed before they let them in? All those things are critical. They're not your
Mm.
wish list. They're
Okay.
critical. But within security, let's say for example, security, within security, there may be some aspects of security that are must-haves. That means they are critical, and there may be
Mhm.
some that are nice to haves. For example, um, you may want to validate all your users, but all
Mm-hmm.
the users may not may not always use two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is, we'll send you a text or send you
Yeah.
a code and you have to log in the code. That may
Hmm.
be extra. That may be
Okay.
an additional level of security. So we want only the right people to come in, but they don't have to use two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication can be a should have or a nice to have. Like if we have space, we can always add it. But should there be security? 1,000%. Because if
Hmm.
there's no security, then people will be able to hack your platform. No one want to come onto your platform because if they log in, someone will come and steal their
It's not
details.
secured.
Yes. So non-functional requirements are usually the things in the back end that make the things you see possible. So the user clicks on share. I click on share screen. The functional aspect of that button is that when I click on it, a screen opens. Then it asks me, do you want to share your entire screen or do you want to share one window? Then I click on entire screen. When I click on entire screen, then a screen is displayed. That's functional. I'm doing something and something is responding. Yeah?
Yes.
But behind that function, there is code and analytics and security and all these different things, making sure that system responds that way to me. That's your non-functional. I don't have to do anything for that to happen. The system is built that way. Do you understand? So that's what you mean by non-functional. The user doesn't have to click on anything. If, for example, there are 5 of us on here, Zoom can handle it. What if there are 200 people on here? Does Zoom have the ability to scale to handle 200 users at the same time? The users don't have to do anything. There's nothing I'm going to press to say if I'm inviting 200 people to Zoom, then I have to click on something to allow it scale. No, but behind, the system has to be robust enough that if there are 10 people, it can handle it. If there are 2,000 people, it can handle it. It can scale to handle that many users. That's a back-end non-functional feature, but it is very important because if not, by the time there are 200 people, then the system starts dragging, then the system is delayed, then no one wants to come on Zoom now. They'll go somewhere else and start having their meetings, because if I use Zoom, the system will slow down. Do you understand? But it's critical. So non-functional doesn't mean that it's a wish list. No, but within your non-functional requirements, there are some that are must-haves. Like this thing, it is important that we have this one. But the other one, if we can add it, should have, nice to have. So within all these different categories of requirements, all of them have must-haves, all of them have should-haves, all of them have nice-to-haves. So you have to put down all the requirements and then prioritize each one. Do you understand? Yeah. So
which means even
yeah, go ahead.
Which means in the functional, you still have those categories: must have, should have,
100%,
and
all
would
of
have.
them.
Yeah.
General, functional, all of them. You have all those categories. So as a BA, you don't prioritize first. You get down all your requirements first. Get down you tell them, oh yeah, what are your I went on a workshop, and at the end of that workshop, we had like 300 requirements. We could only take 50. Only take 50. Like, who is going to deliver on 300? I'm not going to do almost 400 requirements at the end of a two-day workshop. But by the time we finish, we now prioritize and said, okay, for the MVP, we can only take 45 to 50. And then so we which is your must-haves in all these 200 and 300 and 400 requirements. And they highlighted it, and that's what we did. And the others can come later. So regardless of the category, you have to prioritize. Get everything down first and then prioritize. Yeah?
Okay. All right.
Awesome.
And that still has to do. That's still all part of the refinement process where you will have to
100%.
Narrow it down to.
Yes, it's the stakeholder that will tell you what are the must-haves. It's not you. It's not your requirements. It's the stakeholder. So once you've gotten everything down, you still go back to the stakeholder and say, we don't have the finance, we don't have the resources to deliver on all these things at the same time. This is our mandate. This is the scope we have. So could you please let me know which ones are the ones you absolutely have to have? Yeah. Then we can prioritize the rest in additional releases and all of that. But ones must you have? And the stakeholder will say, okay, fine, we need to have number 51, we need to have number 56, we need to have, and then once you do that, you now add it's called the Moscow. So the technique is Moscow. Moscow is must have, should have, could have, and would like to have. So you have your your M for must-haves, S for should-haves, C for could-haves, and W for would like to have, nice to have. So once you prioritize that, then you can separate the must-haves and work on those ones first. And even within the must-haves, you now have to, which one is first? So we know that at the end of the product, we have to have all these 50, but which one comes first? So you now have to put it in the order of delivery. So which one has to be delivered first, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I think that Moscow is what often gives it that makes you, the ones that you don't have to have, you put them in the wish list. That's where the analogy came from a long time
Yep.
ago.
Yep.
Yeah, so since you don't need it, you just put in your wish list. As
Yeah.
long as your business develop, you
Yeah.
bring them down one after the other. Or
100%.
sometimes you don't want to overwhelm your customers.
100%. 100%. That's
Okay.
why you have all these phone companies. They have updates because they will
Mm,
say, okay, these are the features we need for this update. They update it. The next release, they will have
hmm.
additional requirements. They have a backlog of
Yeah.
all the requirements, but they're just
Okay.
saying, okay, we may have thousands of requirements, but we can only do 20 for this release. So we do 20,
Hmm.
we do the next 20, we do the next 20. So it's because you've prioritized it that you already know these ones come first, this ones come next, this ones come next. So
True.
as a BA, be very thorough, write
Hmm.
down all your requirements, get it down, and then once you have that, you now start prioritizing. And then once you prioritize, you have to order it in order of delivery. So that's Moscow. But remember, you're using the ADO board. So even as a BA, you have to understand the different frameworks. So when you're in waterfall, that's how you use your Moscow, MS, all of that. On your Azure DevOps board, there's a priority drop down there that has from 1 to 5. So when you write your user story, you can prioritize it that way. So this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, this is number 4, this is number 5. So that way your project team already knows that number 1 is your most important. So take all the stories with number 1, take all the stories with number 2, take all the stories with number 3. Again, you do all of this with your stakeholder. Yeah. Awesome.
You said for Agile, you said something before, you said the Azure board.
Yeah, your priority your priority scale is not Moscow. It's the drop down that says priority in your on your user story.
Okay.
Have you guys seen it? So when you're writing your user story, let me share my screen real quick. You've seen it, but you may not have noticed it. So all these things are things you do with your PO when you guys are prioritizing. So let me see if I can open a story here. Oh, this is done. Yeah, we should open. Okay, so open. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes,
I
we
can
can.
see,
Yes,
I
I
can see
can.
it's clear, yeah.
So you
Yes, we
have
can.
this, your priority drop down. So this is how you prioritize on your Azure board. Okay, it's 1 to 4. So
Huh?
you have your one,
Yes,
this user
ma'am.
story. What priority is it? 1, 2, 3, or 4? So this is your must have, your number
Yeah,
one.
Gabriela.
Sorry? Okay. So yeah, this is how you prioritize on your ADO board. You don't do Moscow, you use this method. If it's your must have, you definitely put that in, and so on and so forth. Yeah?
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. You are very welcome. Stop sharing. Any other questions while we're waiting for your
Sorry,
people?
Uzo. So
Yeah.
the must have is 1. Is it?
Yes, the way it's ordered in the Azure board, 1 to 4. So your number 1 is this is priority. If you see stories with 1, it's committed first before any other one. So that one is priority. And then your 2, 3, 4, and all of that. So yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're very welcome. Okay. I don't know if your Deji is in the main place, because this is now they may not come to join us. Do you want me to go in and check and see if he's there and come and tell you guys? Because he
Yes,
may.
please. Yes,
Yeah, let
please.
me
Yes,
go because it's
please.
past time. Hold on.